Alright, how's it going, folks? Wits NFL back again for another informative video here. Today, the topic is going to be Battleship lines. Which one is right for you amongst the very different lines that we have in the game? Now, as of current, as of current, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 lines in the game. Each one of them is a little different in a few ways. So let's talk about it a little bit. Which line is best? I am going to go ahead and start off with the good old American lines here. So first of all, we have the primary line, which is the Wyoming through the Iowa. Now, the Wyoming through the Iowa, to me, is a little bit of a rough line. They're not bad, but I never really got along with a lot of these ships. I don't particularly like the New York. I don't play Tier 3 at all anymore, so, I can't really say that that's worth it. Or I can't really be a good judge of that. But among the Tier 3s, I don't know of really too many that would be worse than the Wyoming. So, take it with a grain of salt. New York is not bad. It's just there's better options at Tier 4. New Mexico, kind of the same thing. It's not terrible, but there are other options. I have sold the New Mexico. I've sold a lot of my ships, unfortunately. It's just kind of what I did. Colorado, not terrible. Not great, not terrible, but not a favorite of mine at Tier 6. So the Colorado, let's start off with the New Mexico here, because the Tier 5s are kind of my thing, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So it's covered in 25mm bow, or 25mm plating everywhere, with the exception of what's beneath the torpedo protection. It's pretty thick belt. If we take a look, it's 343 millimeters of armor, and it extends pretty high up in the waterline. The problem with it is, and I guess the problem with a lot of Tier 6 ships, 25 millimeters gets overmatched by 15-inch guns or larger. So you've got a couple ships at Tier 5 that do that. The Bayern, Queen Elizabeth, Warspite, Mutsu, and West Virginia are the main ones that come to mind. But at Tier 6, pretty much everything does that. And there's a lot of times where you're going to end up against Tier 6s. So I don't know that, this would be... It's hard to do, and there are other ships that have 25mm everywhere and do fine, but I just don't think the guns work quite that great, and I don't think it does anything better than the Tennessee, So, like we said, this, if you're going against something with 15-inch guns, they shoot right at your bow, they will go right through it, hit you for 10k, 8k, something like that. And if they're up close, it could be more than that. So, despite the fact that it has 12 guns, it's not enough for me. It's a 32.5 second reload too, which I think the Tennessee has a better reload than that. So, I don't personally like the New Mexico. Colorado here is just below the Iowa. This is not bad. It's not, but it's also not great. 25mm plating everywhere. I mean, if we remove the torpedo protection, it is thick belt armor. 343 again, which is pretty thick, believe it or not. And then the casemate is also 343. It's actually thicker than a lot of Tier 7 ships. But again, the problem is 25mm bow and stern, and you're going up against Tier 7s in this ship. And Tier 7s, there are like 2 ships that can't overmatch you. Now, this isn't uncommon for Tier 6. But it's also the fact that it only has 8 guns. They are 16-inch guns, but they don't seem to be all that accurate. So it's just, again, there's just other ships that I feel outshine this ship quite a bit. And the AA is not that good either. So I feel there are other ships that outshine it. Now, if you stuck through it, if you have completed this line, you're going to get rewarded with the Iowa. Now, the Iowa is, no matter what they do to the game, every update they do, The Iowa is kind of a mainstay, great ship. This thing is never bad. So, the Iowa, the whole point of this line is supposed to be it's accurate, fast, 16-inch guns. Although most of the line is not fast, so I don't really know why they have the Colorado in this line instead of the North Carolina, but that's just me. I think they should personally swap those two. Makes more sense to me. So, this thing, the whole thing about it, 16-inch guns. They're very accurate for battleship guns. So probably the most accurate 16-inch battleship guns. Long range, it's pretty fast, and it's 16-inch guns. And also, the AA is absolutely insane. It's the best AA of any Tech Tree battleship in the game. Maneuverability is pretty bad. It's a horrible turning circle, horrible rudder shift. Detectability is standard. With my build, I've got a 25-second reload. Torpedo protection is not that good. Armor, it's pretty standard, 32mm bow and stern. The deck plating is 38mm, so Yamato's not going to overmatch that, but if the angle is steep enough, it will punch right through. What else do we have here? The belt, it's actually thinner than the previous ships. It's 297mm, they were 343. So that's why this thing gets nuked going broadside so much, is it's got pretty thin armor, actually. It's not that thick for a battleship, but that's the reason it's fast. But the Iowa, like I said, big guns. They are accurate, they hit hard, do a lot of damage, and no matter the update, it's always good. You can always count on it. Next up is the Kansas line. The Kansas line is kind of like a slower, fatter, more gun version of the Iowa line. So starting off with Nevada. Again, it's slower, and I think this one actually has the same amount of guns as the New York, but personally to me, these guns feel more accurate. So I think that this thing is quite a bit better than the New York, personally. I know it's not a favorite amongst the community, but I think it's really, really good. 14-inch guns, they overmatch that tier 4. They're accurate. They hit hard. Moving on to the Tennessee. This ship, contrary to the New York, or the New Mexico rather, I actually love this ship. It's the same amount of guns, the same consumables, better AA, slightly, but mostly, I think the armor might be a little different. The belt's actually, the upper half that gets overmatched is higher in the water, so it is easier to overmatch. So let me preface it this way, rather. The Kansas line is like a squishier version of the Iowa line that is slower, but packs more of a punch. That's probably the best way of putting it, because that is the truth. These ships are squishier than the Iowa line ships, but they pack more of a punch. And personally, I like this line as a whole better. I like the Iowa more than the Kansas, but I like the line as a whole better. It's standard 25mm everywhere, but the guns are very accurate. They hit hard. The reload's not terrible at 28.4 seconds with this build. Pretty standard, but these guns just hit hard. They work. They work really good. I love this ship. Tennessee is a very good ship. North Carolina. This is a great ship at tier 6. What's up, Azuma? North Carolina, to me, is like a better version of the Colorado. Thinner armor. Like, if we take a look, it's 305mm belt, which is actually thicker than the Iowas, but, the deck plating, 37mm, so pretty good. You're not going to be getting overmatched on the deck by tier 7s. 25mm bow and stern once again. But you can kind of angle pretty well. It's a very long belt, so as long as you're angling, you should be good to go. And the guns, once again, you get 9 16-inch guns, American 16s at tier 6, and these guns are accurate. They hit hard. And they don't overpen a lot. They've got very slow shell velocity, so they actually don't overpen cruisers. It's a little harder to hit, but you can also fire, like if you're getting ready to pass through an island, you got a better chance of actually hitting through the island. Also, AA is very good at tier 6. Personally, I think this ship should be in the Iowa line. I just think it should. Kansas is, once again, slower, squishier Iowa with more armament. This thing has 12 16-inch guns, and 4 triple turrets. The AA defense is pretty good. Not as good, but pretty good. Although I don't know why I have secondary battery mod. I should change that. There we go. Now let's take a look. Yeah, pretty good, but not as good. 28.3 second reload with my build. The guns are pretty much the same as the Iowas, except they're more floaty. They're like North Carolina guns as opposed to Iowa guns. So less shell velocity, but they have a higher firing arc. The ship is squishier. The armor is worse. You see the deck is 32 instead of 37 or 40 or whatever it was. The belt is thicker at 343, but because this thing's covered in 32 millimeters everywhere, it just takes weird penetrations. There's a lot of weird ways to take damage in this ship, and it is very squishy. But the damage output it puts out is absolutely insane. And it is agile too. It's a good ship. Don't sleep on it. Next up is the Japanese line. The Japanese line, kind of some of the high points. I'll do it this way. I'll go through the high points and low points on the line. Iowa's low points are going to be most of the line. I'd say the New York, New Mexico are low points. Colorado, middle point. Iowa's a high point. The Kansas line, I would go ahead and say the entire line is a high point. Of these ships, I think the worst one out of this line is the Kansas. And that's saying something, because the Kansas is not a bad ship at all. It's a very good ship. It's just that line as a whole is so good. But some people don't enjoy its playstyle. Next up is Japanese line. Some low points: Ishizuki, Kongo, and Nagato. Fuso and Amagi are high points. Now the Amagi is kind of like the Iowa. It's an Iowa it's a turret farm battleship. It's 16-inch Japanese guns. So, great HE, 6,500 damage each. AP is pretty solid. They are accurate. They reload in the same time as Iowa. AA is not as good. Hit points is not as good. But you do get much better torpedo damage reduction. And you, well, I guess that's not going to be a factor anymore. I was going to say you have the concealment mod, but you don't. All battleships are going to get the concealment mod soon. So, you don't really have to worry about that. Armor-wise, it is pretty much the same as the Iowa. Don't go flat broadside or you're going to die. It is a turtleback, technically, and it is very thin armor. So if you go flat broadside at range, you are going to get absolutely destroyed. In theory, because it's a I don't think the Citadel is raised if we look at it. It's right at the waterline. So in theory, at close range, you shouldn't be taking Citadels, but it doesn't really work that way. You just take Citadels if you're broadside, so... But the guns are really good. The HE is insane, the AP is very good, and it is pretty accurate. A lot of people don't like the Amagi, but I personally do. Let's see. So, the British line. The British line, I don't think there's a whole lot of low points. Low points, Iron Duke. I'd say Vanguard's probably another low point of this line. As a whole, this line's very good. Queen Elizabeth, absolutely insane at Tier 5. This is my favorite Tier 5 tech tree ship. Kansas is, or not Kansas, no, what is the name? Not the New Mexico, Tennessee. Tennessee's is a close second. This thing gets 15-inch guns. It overmatches all the bows at Tier 5 and Tier 6. Armor is pretty good. Firing angles are pretty good. HE's good. AP's good. It's just a good ship. It's a very high point in this line. King George is a high point as well. It does have small guns for Tier 6. You only have 14-inch guns, so you can't actually overmatch people. But the HE on this thing is crazy. I mean, you hit people for 15k. It's like a Conqueror at Tier 6. Without the super heals. It is tanky, too. It's actually quite tanky because the belt just works. If we look at we have 381mm belt. That explains a lot. That's thicker than Vladivostok's belt. That explains why you don't get Citadels on this thing. You can absolutely punch people if they go flat or you can punch the King George if it goes flat broadside, but more so than actually being not raised, this Citadel is actually submerged. So combine that with the incredibly thick belt armor here of 381 millimeters. It doesn't extend all the way out. It's submerged. This thing doesn't take citadels. And also the 25 millimeter section is actually very small, so your chances of getting overmatched there are pretty small. The belt can be overmatched, but if you're angling properly, you're moving at range, it's going to make it harder to actually hit your belt. So I think this is a great ship at tier 6. It's a fantastic ship at tier 6. Vanguard, if we take a look, it has 15-inch guns. They reload pretty quickly, and you get a reload booster, and pretty good heals. The problem with Vanguard is it's squishy, and it has bad firing arcs. So it's hard to, get along with because you're requiring yourself to just kind of show a really flat broadside. Now, you do have pretty thick belt armor at 356. That is on the thicker end. But when it goes flat broadside, it just gets nuked. And it takes weird penetrations because you have 32mm plating everywhere. It just takes weird penetrations. And you're required to show a very flat broadside to get all 4 of these, or all 8 of these guns off. But the HE is really good. It's got short fuse armor piercing, so it doesn't overpen cruisers as much. AA is not bad. It's not slow. It's pretty hidden. Secondaries are secondaries, I guess. It has great HE chance, HE fire chance. 6,700 damage, 42% fire chance, and great AP shell damage. It's actually got the highest AP shell damage at tier 7 for tech tree. But look at that reload, 20.8 seconds. So very good there. And the heals are very good. So it's best equipped to deal with the HE spam than other lines. German line, some low points. Probably the Gneisenau would be the low point. The German line as a whole is pretty good. I'd say Gneisenau and Bayern are low points, but neither of them are that terrible. Bayern gets 15-inch guns at tier 5, if we take a look at it. Difference is, it's inaccurate, but it does get an icebreaker bow, so it doesn't get overmatched at the entire, bow section, as opposed to other ships. Pretty thick armor. It does not take citadels very often, but if it goes flat broadside, it can be nuked, so keep that in mind. Not one shot, but still, it can get touched. The guns aren't accurate. Secondaries are pretty good at tier 5. I run a secondary build on this thing, because you get a lot of them, and they have pretty solid range with a secondary build. It's kind of a meme. But it is like a mini Bismarck at tier 5. With my build, now, if you're low-level commanders, your commanders are not going to push it out that far. But with my build, my secondaries go up to 7.5 kilometers. You can get further if you have Arpeggio Haruna. I do not. But I've got 7.5 kilometers. Gneisenau is interesting. It gets 15-inch guns. Only 6 of them, but 15-inch guns. Pretty good secondaries. Once again, I think they're 8-kilometer secondaries. They're a little longer. Not that long, but a little longer. And interestingly, it gets torpedoes, 3 on each side, as a battleship. Only 6-kilometer range, but, it's torpedoes. You also have the ability to overmatch people with these guns. They're not the most accurate, they don't hurt the most, but they are 15s, they overmatch. And this thing is pretty tanky. It's got an icebreaker bow, pretty thick belt armor. It's actually thicker than Bismarck's. And it's pretty quick. It's a pretty good ship, but it's not that good compared to the other ships. It's not competitive at tier 6, I don't think. It's just kind of fun. So, that would be a low point. Next up is the Bismarck. The whole purpose of this line is secondaries. It's brawling. Bismarck gets a sonar, gets a secondary booster, and the meme of Bismarck is turtleback armor, 15-inch guns, and they have long-range secondaries. With this build, we have 10.2 kilometer secondaries. I actually have another build which takes that even further than that. If I could find it. It goes out to like 10.9, I want to say, with that build. With my commanders. So, this thing is just kind of a secondary machine. It's got sonar too, which is pretty good. The main guns, if you're running a hybrid dispersion secondary build, actually work not that bad. And the fact that it has sonar is pretty good too. So this one is not terrible, depending on the build you run. And a lot of people like it just because it's fun. It's got all those secondaries, so a lot of fun. Next up is the French line. The whole point of the French line is just to kind of be weird, I think. You know, the British is HE focused. The German is secondary focused / brawling focused. French is just kind of focused on being weird. All these ships are weird. Low points of the line: Britannia, Normandy. High points: Lyon, Richelieu. If you suffer through these first 3 ships and make it to Lyon, you'll start having a very good time. Nagato was my favorite of the Japanese battleship line. I didn't get along with it that well. British battleship line is my favorite. It was mine too for some time. So this ship, Icebreaker Bow. What is the draw to Lyon? What makes this thing so special? Well, it's got 4 quad turrets, which means 16 guns, which is insane. They're small, 340. That's a little under 14 inch. But because there's so many of them, if you get a broadside target, this thing will absolutely demolish it. Especially cruisers. Cruisers can just kiss their ass goodnight. It has insane amounts of guns, and if you're running a dispersion build, they're accurate enough that they'll actually hurt people. I mean, you can get insane alpha strikes if you get like a broadside American ship and you're close range. You can do 30-40k easy. 27 knots. It's not that hidden, but the whole draw to this thing is 16 guns. It's quite a bit of fun. Richelieu. This thing's a beast. This thing is my favorite battleship at tier 7. It doesn't look like it on paper. There's nothing, too, I guess, good about it on paper, right? Only 36% fire chance, 5100 HE damage, 11,000 AP damage. When you're looking at it, it'll probably say 30-second reload. But because of the French extra skills, you can actually get it to like 24.4. I've seen a little lower than that. The dispersion's not that good, but so why would you run this thing? Well, it's hard to explain. It's one of those ships that just works. The dispersion is not that good, but it's just enough to work if you've got a dispersion build on it. With the exception of Megalomania, you run that, you should be fine. And what's more is it's fast. The guns turn quickly, which doesn't sound like a benefit on paper, but trust me, it allows you to get off a lot of shots that you can't get off in other ways. And it can actually save you at times. These guns get insane penetration. I mean, they get more citadels than anything else, even though they're not doing that much. They just get an insane amount of them. All the guns are over the bow, which, again, you wouldn't think it's that big of a deal, but that allows you to show any angle you want. And I'm not an advocate for just bow tanking the whole game, but it does allow you to get all your guns off at any angle. As long as you're not retreating, accelerating away from somebody, you won't have any problem getting all your guns off at any given moment. So that allows full salvos no matter what. That is the real benefit of this ship. And trust me, it makes a difference. Also, this thing is, like we said, fast. It is tanky. It's got a very trolly citadel. It's very susceptible to HE, but that's a lot of ships. But this thing's citadel is like impossible to hit. Most people have no idea how to actually hit the citadel of this ship. 330mm belt, which is not that thick. Pretty thick, but not that thick. But for whatever reason, because this thing has like this weird V-shape casemate here, it prevents it from taking citadels. So, don't ask me why, but people get away with going flat broadside in this ship with only like 8,000 damage gone. It's just the way it works. This thing is a beast. It's an absolute beast. The shell trajectory is really good. It's fast, it's tanky, guns reload pretty quick. Guns penetrate very well, and you get all your guns over the front. It's a very good ship at tier 7. Next up, the Russian line. Some high points of this line, or low points, I would say the Ismail is a low point. And the Pewter Veliki, I'd say the Ismail is really the main low point. Ismail gets 12 14-inch guns. They're not that accurate. You only get 2 heals. It's just, it's one of those ships that just kind of trolls you a lot. And it also, another thing about the Russian line, the whole point of this is it's tanky if you know what you're doing. If you are angling properly in Russian battleships, you're not going to take any penetrations. If you go flat broadside, you will get one shot. That's just kind of the whole point of the line. But it's very good. And the guns are also very fast trajectory as well, and have great penetration. Especially the 16-inch guns, once you start getting to those. So the Synop, let's just take a look at this real quick. 16-inch guns, I sold it just because I don't play enough of Tier 6. And I wanted the credits for Vladivostok, so I wanted to make a video on it. I did it. Don't do that. This thing is Icebreaker Bow equipped. It's got 16-inch guns, 9 16-inch guns. Very thick belt armor as well. 300 millimeters there. So yeah, I guess it's just 300. It overmatches everything. You get on-demand repairs as well, which I think is a benefit. It limits you to 4 at most. But, you know, I can't think of too many scenarios where you're getting off many more than 4 damage cons in any given game anyway. The AP is absolutely insane on this ship and Vladivostok. It just gets crazy penetrations, and the AP against destroyers just seems to do really good for whatever reason. Vladivostok, this is one of my favorites at Tier 7. It's not enough people play this ship, man. It has 9 16-inch guns. They don't reload that quickly, but they're very fast-traveling shells, which means it's a lot easier to hit cruisers. The penetration on this thing is insane. I mean, it gets tons of citadels. And the fact that it's so tanky, because the bow is so long, and then you've got guns, it's very hard to hit the superstructure of this ship. So even HE and AP spammers like Minotaur, they have a hard time getting damage off of you. And a lot of times they won't shoot you, because they're not going to get much damage. Also, battleships. This is a very scary ship for battleships. People don't play this ship, but they're terrified of it, which makes no sense. If you're terrified of a ship in the match, good chance that ship's pretty good. This thing's bow is so long, and it's such a weird angle that if you're showing like an angle like this, and they shoot at you, no matter where, you've got a weird rounded bow, and then you also have a insanely thick casemate, or citadel. It is raised, but it's 370 millimeters, so very, very thick. They're just going to shatter, ricochet, bounce, pretty much all their shells. You know, it's very hard to actually get damage off of a Vladivostok. Now, if you show this angle, because the citadel is raised, and it's very thick, that means if they shoot right here, you'll get nuked. They're not going to overpen you. They're going straight through, and they will do a 40,000 plus damage salvo. You will get absolutely destroyed showing a flat broadside. But if you're angling properly, you're going to shatter all those shells they're firing at you. It's a very good ship. Not enough people play it. Not that I'm asking you to turn it into the meta, because I think that would actually start to get annoying, because there'd be no damage to go around as a battleship player. But, you know, people don't think it's broken. For whatever reason, they don't think it's broken. So, I continue to use it. And not everyone else uses it, so take advantage of it, I guess. Next up is the Italian line. Some low points of this line. The Cavalier, the Andrea Doria. Pretty much the Tier 3 on through Tier 5 are low points in this line to me. This is the last line here. So, the Andrea Doria has... The whole point of the Italian line is brawling. It's kind of like supposed to be fast, agile, and good secondaries. You're supposed to get up close. The problem with this is this ship, and you also get one more heal than other lines. The problem with this is that this Tier 5 version just does not work. It gets nuked through the bow. If you go flat broadside, it's got a raised citadel. I guess it's at the waterline. Or no, it is raised. Yeah. It gets nuked if you go flat broadside. The armor is not that thick either. And what's more, the guns are only 320 millimeters. They still reload in 30 seconds. So, yeah, you get 10 of them, but it's like, would you really rather have 10 320 millimeter guns over, you know, 8 15s or 12 14s? And they aren't accurate either. This thing's not tanky. It's not accurate. The secondaries aren't long range either. They're 4 kilometer base. They're actually short range. But they are SAP. So, I think this thing is absolutely terrible at Tier 5. I've seen a couple people like it, but the opinion is that it's terrible. The Caracciolo, once you suffer through it, it becomes absolutely... Or once you suffer through the Doria, the Caracciolo becomes very, very fun. Kind of hope the British battlecruiser line comes to Legends. Yeah, me too. I was hoping for that for a while. Gengut was the only Russian battleship I liked. Which one? How many did you get through? Vladivostok was meant to have a third turret on the bow. Quite possibly. But that would kind of be busted. But, you know, because it didn't, we just get to take advantage of the no damage. So, I'm not complaining about it. So, Caracciolo. This thing's beast. It's got 8 15-inch guns. The armor, it is kind of a high skill wall ship. If you go flat broadside, you get nuked. Raised citadel. Very raised citadel. So if you go flat broadside, you will get nuked. Potentially one shot. Belt is okay. It's 300 millimeters. But again, if you're going flat broadside, you will get nuked. If they overmatch your bow, you get nuked. But you do get an icebreaker bow. So it's kind of hard to do that. SAP secondaries. They're pretty long range. They're 4.5 kilometer base. So if you push that out, you get them out to 6.8. Which is enough. Because this thing gets a rolling smoke screen, which allows you to close the distance quite well. It's also hidden. It's fast. It's agile. So it kind of allows you to get into places so that way you can actually use those secondaries. Also, the guns are great. The Italian 15s are fantastic. They are kind of like the French 15s. They just get really good penetrations for whatever reason. The guns relocate very quickly too. They turn very quickly. The secondaries absolutely shred destroyers and shred ships in general that come across at Tier 6. At Legendary Tier, they don't struggle, but they do get a little less penetrations. But Tier 6, it's the same secondaries that the Veneto gets, and it absolutely shreds things. So, very good. AA is not terrible, but combined with the fact that you have the smoke screen, you know, if a carrier wants to bully you, they'll have a harder time doing that. So, I do enjoy this ship. HE is okay. It's great for dev striking destroyers, not great for HE, spamming battleships. But the AP is fantastic. And it's a very fun ship. I highly recommend the Caracciolo. I think that's the high point of the line. And another high point of the line, Veneto. It's pretty good. Not as good as the, what is it called? Caracciolo is at Tier 6, but still pretty good. Or pretty fun, rather. I don't think it's like a competitive ship, but it's a fun ship. I actually hold the damage record as of currently in the Veneto. It is the lowest damage record for any battleship at Tier 7, so keep that in mind. Guns are not that accurate, but again, they kind of work. Secondaries, 7.5 kilometer range. Again, this is a brawler. The whole point of this line is to be a brawler. But because they're SAP, they just do insane amounts of damage. They shred things, especially destroyers. Destroyers who are YOLO rushing you or get spotted and are in range of your secondaries will get hurt. You get 9 15-inch guns. Again, they're kind of like French 15s. They just penetrate. They don't reload that quick. 28.3 seconds. AA is okay. Not that great. It's pretty fast. It's very agile. That's another thing. This ship is incredibly agile for a battleship. It's pretty hidden. It's 0.2 kilometers more hidden than other battleships. It's pretty tanky. It's kind of like the Vladivostok. If you shoot at the proper angle, you're not going to take damage, but it has to be a steeper one. Probably like this angle, they'll just shatter and bounce. There's no real places they can shoot at your ship to get good damage. Now, if you go flat broadside, it's another one of those ships that just gets one shot. Because of the raised citadel. Armor belt is not that thick either. So, yeah, it gets nuked. But if you show the proper angle, you will shatter and bounce a lot of shells. There is a little bit of 375 actually there, and the torpedo protection. So, kind of a weird thing. But anyway, it's pretty fun. It's a brawler. It's fast. It's agile. Great for dealing with destroyers. A lot of fun. That's just kind of the point of the Italian line. It's not the best in all situations, but it's pretty fun. So that kind of takes us through most of these lines, kind of what they're about. I hope that it helped you guys in deciding. I kind of went through the the points of the lines, went through what the best ones are. Which one is my personal favorite? Which line? The line would probably be the secondary American line. I just think the whole line as a whole is just fun. It's good. Which tier 7? Now, one thing I do want to mention is it is probably going to change with the introduction of tier 8. Which lines are going to become more important? I think the one that is the Kansas line, we're probably going to get another one at tier 8 there. Germany, we're going to get another one above Bismarck, and that's going to be where it starts. I don't know what's coming after that. Nobody really knows. But I'd imagine probably British, maybe Japanese would be the next wave. Then probably French and the Russians, followed by finally the Italians. Because there was no even real plans for anything above the Romas. They had not even made plans for that. So that's kind of my opinion on all the lines, showing you what they're about. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully it helped you out. If you did like the video, subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on the video. If you want to support the channel a little extra, there is a donation link in the description. Aside from that, I will be doing a bit of a real live stream, probably running some Talon following this. So stay tuned for that. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for tuning in.